For years, I've been searching for just the perfect longsword. I wanted something that was beautiful to the eye, perfectly functional, and just well and solidly crafted. Now, there's one company out there that makes really good swords. The problem is they're expensive. And I had some internal debate as to whether or not I really wanted to spend that much money on a sword. But eventually I saved up enough money and I bought it. What sword am I talking about? I'm talking about the Albion Ringeck. And it was worth every cent. The Albion Ringeck is a limited edition medieval war sword named for Sigmund Ringeck and is an Oakeshott Type XVa longsword. In the first half of the 15th century, swordmaster Sigmund Ringeck compiled a book with comments on the fencing teachings of Johannes Lichtenauer. The verses from about 1389, Master Sigmund Ringeck's commentaries on Johannes Lichtenauer's Fechtbuch 1389 to 1440. Ringeck's longsword style is very simple and yet elegant in its approach, based on efficiency and simplicity. While many of the medieval fighting manuals primarily cover counter techniques and tricks, Ringeck's greatness is that he starts with the basics and then step by step teaches the students the secret of the longsword. David Lindholm has an excellent online introduction to Ringeck, as well as a book, Sigmund Ringeck's Knightly Art of the Longsword, the first in a series of medieval martial arts books available from Paladin Press. Oakeshott describes the Type 15 as a strongly tapered, acutely pointed blade of flattened diamond cross-section. The subtype 15A is often longer and slimmer than the Type 15, but with a primary difference being the longer grip. This type of sword was referred to as an épée bastard, or bastard sword. A limited edition handcrafted collectible sword, this sword is offered in a limited edition of only 1,000 collectible swords worldwide. The specifications of this sword are the overall length is 46.25 inches, that's 117.5 centimeters, blade length of 36.5 inches, 92.7 centimeters, blade width of 1.875 inches, 4.76 centimeters, with a center of gravity of 4 inches, 10.1 centimeters, and a center of percussion, 22.75 inches, 57.8 centimeters. The weight is 3 pounds, 5.5 ounces, or 1.5 kilograms. This sword can have customized grip colors, and the grip comes in 3 varieties: the tapered grip, the wasted grip, and the wasted grip with a half-wire wrap. The price range is from $880 to $1,100. The specifications and design of this sword are by renowned swordsmith Peter Johnson. 3 words: simple, clean lines. Albion blades are CNC machined and are based on precise designs, which means that every sword that comes from Albion is meant to be perfect. While touch-ups and sharpenings are done by humans, they do a fantastic job, and this precision results in very clean lines with no noticeable defect or imperfect surface. The hilt assembly undergoes similar care in making precision parts, and the final result is a sword that exudes simple elegance. Simple elegance is a phrase that I use when I'm giving a sword extremely high praise. In my experience, as well as my preference, I prefer simple, straightforward designs in a sword, usually with little to no frills. But what you find in a simple sword design is that, well, it's almost harder to make it aesthetically pleasing because imperfections cannot be lost in those complexities. And taking a look at the parts of this sword a little bit closer, you can see what I mean. The blade is thick and heavily tapered, as well as having a generous distal taper, with a thick ridge down the length of the blade. The edge, while sharp, has no visible edge bevel, which is something that I've noticed in Albion swords. The crossguard is an Oakeshott Type 7, a very simple crossguard that has been expertly machined and crafted. One of my favorite features on any Albion sword is the grip, and I'll talk more about this in my functionality section. My Ringeck has a wasted grip that tapers to the pommel. It is wrapped with an oxblood dyed leather. My Ringeck does not include the optional half-wire wrap. Finally, the pommel is a Type T scent stopper pommel, and there is only minor evidence of the peen, but it's there. The entire hilt assembly is perfectly put together. Again, this sword is made of simple, clean lines. When I first unboxed this sword, I was surprised by the weight. Then a few seconds later, I was surprised again. You see, at first it felt a little bit heavy, and then it felt light. Now, I realized that this being a long sword, it really had everything to do with whether or not I was holding it with one hand or two, and having a good two-handed grip on this sword makes all the difference. The edge is sharp, and right out of the box, I can go do cut tests. I feel that Albion's could always probably be a slightly sharper, but there really isn't a need. It cuts just fine. I will note that the thickness of the blade does send the top of the bottles flying a bit more than a thinner blade would. The exact steel used by Albion is something of an unknown. It's kind of their trade secret. But what we do know about it is that it is a high carbon steel blade that has been properly tempered to be strong and flexible just as it should be. But the thing that I think is important to note is that it holds up against wear extremely well. I've been using this one since I've gotten it, and I see no real signs of any nicks or scratches on it at all. A friend and fellow HEMA practitioner of mine, he, holding this sword, said, "You know what, comparing this sword to all the other swords we get to use, we begin to understand what would really make a sword of legend like Excalibur so very different." And I kind of agree with him. Now, the grip of this sword, just like any Albion sword, is really something amazing. It's the quality of the wrapping. It's where they use an epoxy and twine binding to keep the leather perfectly bonded to the rest of the sword. And in doing so, it really isn't discernible to the hand that the leather is not, well, just one solid piece with the wooden core, and for that matter, one solid piece to the rest of the sword. It doesn't slip, it doesn't shift, and with the addition of the wasted grip, this whole sword begins to just feel like an extension of the arm. In fact, the whole sword, the blade, the hilt, the wrapping, it all feels like just one solid piece. And that's what's amazing about this sword. It just works so well. Okay, so I need to sit back for a moment and make a quick point. And that is that I need to admit that I am, in fact, an Albion fanboy. But not without really good reason. You see, I believe it's the quality of Albion swords that make people a fan of their product. Now, are there other good sword companies out there? Yes, absolutely there are, and some of them can even rival the quality of Albion. I will freely admit that. But I think one of the things that is a drawback to doing an internet video review like this is that, well, there's an intangible quality to these swords that it's hard to appreciate. So I would encourage any of my viewers who have never actually held or used an Albion sword before to go find someone who owns one of these and ask them if you can just hold it and see what it feels like, because it really is amazing. Now, in the interest of being objective, I do have to try to also speak to the negatives. But if you notice something about this review so far, I have not said one bad thing about this sword. And I really tried to find something I didn't like. But in the end, this sword is just perfection. Now, in the interest of being as objective as possible, I will make a note to Albions in general, not specifically this sword, and that is the expense. Their swords are very expensive, and I think it often puts it out of the price range for many people who would like to own a really high quality sword. So I get that expense is probably a bit of a drawback. But for a serious collector or a practitioner of European medieval swords, I'd say you have to own at least one Albion. And if you're going to own an Albion, I would wholeheartedly endorse this one, the Albion Ringeck. I give it a 5 out of 5.